الله وبركاته بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. As we read different reflections of Imam Ibn al-Jawzi in this amazing work, Shaykh Khatira, we start to identify certain patterns in his reflections. And among these patterns is we see him reflecting on the importance of attaining balance as a human being, balance as a believer. And this balance is the avoidance of excess. Excess one way is bad, excess another way is just as bad. And so he talks about the importance of a person working to have some balance in their mizaj, their temperament, their personality, their attitudes, as well as their diet, their energy expenditure, their sleep, you name it. He talks about the importance of balance. And so in the next couple of reflections he offers in Shaykh Khatira, he is reflecting on the connection between good health and good character. Now, does this mean that a person who is unbalanced physically in some way, due to perhaps under-eating or overeating, or someone who is suffering from a chronic condition must necessarily have bad character? Of course not. But understanding health holistically, he is arguing that taking care of one's health is a key for developing good character as well. So in the next couple of sessions, we're going to reflect and read what he says regarding this issue. And tonight, we read his reflection about this where he says, you must give your body what it is used to. You must give your body what it is used to. And there's actually a backstory to this reflection. We have mentioned this before. Imam Ibn al-Jawzi came from a wealthy family. This family had a good amount of money and property, and so he grew up in wealth and privilege. And so he was accustomed to a certain diet. A diet of very nice, rich foods, plenty of food. There was no refrigerator back then, but they had food. And so he ate quite well as a young man. And as he entered into his 20s, he was inspired by some of the accounts of many of the early zuhad and ascetics who minimized or diminished their food to a point of actual hunger as a spiritual practice for discipline. And he felt inspired to imitate what they did. And so he began to reduce his food intake bit by bit, day after day, until he was eating very little food. And this is someone in their 20s, you know, fi unfuwani shababi, as they say in Arabic, in the peak of his virility as a young man. So cutting back your food at that age is not advisable in the long term. So what happened to him? Because he was so used to eating fine foods, coming up in a wealthy household, cutting back his food so drastically actually led to long-term health problems for him. So he's writing this book towards the end of his life, and he's reflecting on the fact that he actually damaged his health by following that advice, not taking into consideration that there are certain norms he grew up with, and going against them actually damaged his health. So he says, one must not force his body to do what it cannot endure, because the body is like a riding animal. If one is not gentle with it, it will not deliver him to his destination. Now, when he says this, he's actually drawing it from a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he is reported to have said that the body of the believer is the world itself, and the body and the nourishment, all of this is mati'atul mu'min. It is the riding mount of the believer. It is the means by which we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, you'll see people who are determined to be ascetic, yet their body is used to luxuries. So he turns away from what his body was used to and allows diseases to frequent him, blocking his path to much worship. Now, our problem in today's time is not people looking to be zuhad and to eat a piece of bread and 2 dates a day. That's not a problem for most people today. The problem is in the opposite direction, which is gluttony and excessive eating, but it's still a problem. Now, what he's saying is this blocks the path to much worship. This is a longer reflection. We're going to pick up on Saturday and then next Wednesday, Fajr and Isha, and then through the week, because the important thing to take away from this is that we understand as Muslims that there are what we call maqasid al-sharia, or the overarching objectives of sharia, the major objectives of the sacred law. And these major objectives of sharia aim for the preservation of the deen, hifdhud deen, preservation of religion, hifdhul nafs, preservation of life, hifdhul mal, preservation of wealth, hifdh of aql, preservation of the mind, and hifdhul nasl or ird, preservation of the family line or one's honor. So basically, the objectives of Sharia go back to preserving these 5 things: preserving the religion, preserving your life, preserving your wealth, preserving your mind, preserving your family, progeny, honor, and so on. Now, here's the thing: without having some measure of good health, it is very difficult to preserve these 5 things. Because without some measure of health, many of the basic arkan of Islam are more difficult to do, and a person has to resort to the urakhas, the dispensations for people who are unable to do it in the ordinary way. So a person who is sick and cannot use water, they have to use tayammum. A person who is too sick to pray normally standing, they may have to sit. Maybe a sickness, maybe it's an injury. So preserving health helps preserve the deen in that way. You need health in order to fast. You need health in order to earn money to pay zakat. And you definitely need some measure of health to make the rigors of Hajj. Same thing for preserving life, preserving one's intellect, and so on. Health plays a major role in securing the objectives of Sharia. So when he focuses on this point, he's not speaking as a doctor, and he's not giving specific health advice. He's just reminding us to be mindful of the most important principle of medicine, which is coming to grips with our relationship with food. Neither going to excess in denial, nor going into excess in overeating in a way that damages our health. To find that balance based on our cultural norm, our sociological norm, what we're accustomed to, which supports our unique body type, what's good for us, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So I'm not going to read Ibn Jawzi and tell you, you have to become vegan, a'udhu billah, or to be something else, or keto, or paleo, or carnivore, or this, or that. You have to find what works for you, but you have to find that balance. And this is the advice that he's giving in the next couple of sessions, inshallah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله